I wonder if you have ever been called to be a witness. It happened to me quite early in my life. As a young man of 19 years old, I was walking along the road, and I was not as lucky as Kathy because there was a real accident which I witnessed. And one of the people in that accident was truly at fault. So I ended up being summoned to court. And I was quite nervous. Never been to court before. Kind of scared of the judge and, all the formality and swearing on the Bible and all this kind of stuff. But I went, and it was not a bad experience because all I had to do is just tell them what I saw. Kind of easy. And I think in our time and culture, to be a witness is relatively easy. We can just call it the way it is. We can tell the story the way we saw it. Might, in a case like this, might be slightly inconvenient to have to take time out and go to court and to testify on behalf of somebody else. But there's really no big cost to being a witness. But not so in the time that the Gospel of Luke was written. To be a witness to Jesus Christ was a very dangerous thing in that time. Now, probably in your Bible studies and times together, you have learned that the Gospel of Luke is actually part of two books, Luke and Acts, written by the same author, for a very curious character named at the beginning of the Gospel. The name of this character is Theophilus. And there are so many books written about who this Theophilus is. People are trying to figure out, can we identify this person Theophilus that Luke is writing for? And some of the theories are that he was the brother of the old Roman Emperor Vespasian. Others think that he's a Roman official, and others have argued that he's the high priest of Israel. But the name literally means God lover. Anybody here this morning who loves God? Well, you know what that means? This gospel is for you. If you wish to love God, this gospel is for you. And whoever it might have been meant for originally, I think the name God lover includes all of us who seek to want to know God and love God in a certain way. And so this is our gospel this morning. And this message is in a very specific way for us on this 177th anniversary of St. Andrew's Church. So we're told in this story that we have to be witnesses. This story is written so that we can go out. This whole gospel is written so that we can go out and tell the same story to other people, to bear witness to it. And we have just heard that it was costly in the time of Luke to do this. In fact, the word in the original language used for witness is martyria, from which we get our word martyr. And that word, the English word martyr, comes from that original Greek word because the early Christians suffered martyrdom, death, for bearing witness to Jesus Christ. In our lesson, Jesus appears among the disciples, and they are scared. They don't know what to make of this. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where something absolutely extraordinary happened and you just could not wrap your head or your mind or your feelings around this particular event. They were in shock. And you know that feeling when you're in shock where you have to pinch yourself? Is this really true? Did this really happen? In some way, in a bad way, and yet also in a good way, they were in shock in those moments. It's fascinating because Luke was a doctor, but he was also a really good psychologist. And so this is the one gospel where we get all these little side comments about the feelings of the people involved in the stories of Jesus. Luke observed how Jesus impacted on them emotionally. And here he observes that the disciples were in shock and they were confused. those kind of natural feelings we all have when something extraordinary like this happens. They could pinch themselves. But Jesus was standing among them, and they said to themselves, is he a ghost? Our translation said spirit, but they really meant a ghost. Is he some kind of apparition? Because he's supposed to be dead. Why is he here among us? They're trying to get a grip on what's actually going on. And this Jesus, in the midst of this, brings peace to his disciples. But also, Luke notices in his telling of the story that this Jesus attends to these confusing feelings that his disciples have. He doesn't just move on and give them the sermon. He first attends to their fear and confusion. And he does so by saying to them, look, I'm a physical being. I'm here with you. And when they're now happy, it says they're joyful in the text, but they're still a bit confused and uncertain. And so he says, well, got some food there. What's more natural than sharing food together? And so he eats. This Jesus is very human. And he makes his disciples feel at ease. He brings them peace and wholeness in the midst of their confusion and uncertainty. In fact, this act of Jesus, of making his disciples comfortable, brings one of the two great themes of the gospel to the fore in this final passage in the gospel narrative. There are two big themes in Luke. And the first theme is not surprising, because Luke was a doctor. And that theme is healing and wholeness. And so this is the gospel where we get all these comments about how people's physical ailments were healed, but also how salvation is eternal, yes, but it is also in the now, a coming of wholeness to us as people, completely as we are in this state. And it doesn't mean that, all our pains necessarily disappear or even all our fears are gone immediately. But it means that the peace of Jesus penetrates through those things and bring us a kind of wholeness that surpasses even our circumstances. I had a friend that you may have read about in the Presbyterian Record and so on, Chris Weiss, who died of Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. And when he was going through his suffering time, and he ended up in his wheelchair, and he could hardly move, he couldn't move at all, and he could just get some sounds out. One day he said to us, when we visited him, I am whole. I am whole. Even though my body wastes away, I am whole. I am whole in the love of Jesus Christ. I am healed, even though my body speaks otherwise. I know that I am whole. And it is that kind of wholeness that Luke tries to communicate throughout his gospel. The one verse that outlines this beautifully in the gospel we find in chapter 19, verse 10. For the Son of Man came to seek and to heal what was lost. Now, I said to heal, some translations would say to save. The word is the same. To heal and to save in the Greek language is exactly the same word. And Luke, when somebody is physically healed, uses the same word for their physical healing. These are wide words. Wholeness is part of what we bear witness to as Christians. This is what we are called to speak of in Jerusalem and all through the world to all the nations. And in fact, this verse in chapter 19 says, he came to seek and to heal what was lost. And lostness is not just something that's missing. The word for lostness there is to perish, to not exist at all, to be utterly away from all things. It is a deep and profound concept of lostness. Jesus came to bring us from that lostness to healing wholeness of salvation.